It started with a joke, the kind of thing you say over coffee and never expect to change your life. "Hey, my brother's single and he's a lawyer. You'd like him." That's what Caleb said to me 3 months ago, leaning back in his chair with that teasing grin he always wore. I laughed, pretending not to care. But later that night, when I got home, I found myself scrolling through the photos he'd sent and stopped at one picture. Noah Bennett, 30, Harvard Law, eyes that could talk you into confessing your deepest sins. I should have known better than to let a crush begin with a headshot. When I finally met him, Noah wasn't at all like I'd imagined. He was colder, smarter, the kind of man who measured his words like evidence in court. But beneath that sharp tone and quiet confidence, there was something else, something that made me want to step closer, even when I knew I shouldn't. The first time we spoke alone, he looked at me for a long time before saying, "Caleb said you were different." "Different good or different bad?" I asked, half smiling. "Different dangerous," he said. And that was it. That was the moment I knew I was in trouble. Noah lived in a quiet neighborhood near Pacific Heights, where the houses looked like old souls with too much money. He invited me over once, under the excuse of helping him review a presentation for a client. I spent the whole night pretending to focus on the slides while his voice wrapped around me like velvet. When he walked me to the door, I could feel his presence close, restrained, like a storm that refused to break. "You're not what I expected," he said softly. "Neither are you." The space between us was electric. He reached up, as if to touch my face, but stopped, fingers trembling midair. Then he whispered, "This can't happen," and yet it did. The following weeks blurred into something that felt both dangerous and inevitable. Late-night calls, quiet dinners, stolen glances when Caleb wasn't looking. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, at least that's what Noah said. But it did. It meant everything. He'd text me, "Can you come by? Just to talk." And I'd go, every time. One evening, after another, just to talk, that turned into hours of silence and lingering touches. Noah told me about his past. He'd been engaged once to a woman. She'd left when she found out he'd been unfaithful, not with another woman, but with a man he couldn't admit he loved. Since then, he'd built walls so high, even his brother didn't see the cracks. "I don't want to be someone's mistake again," he said, staring out the window. "You're not," I told him, though part of me wasn't sure if he believed it. He smiled, a small, broken thing. "You will be eventually." And in that quiet moment, something inside me shattered. But love doesn't always make sense. Sometimes it finds you in the wrong place, wrapped in the wrong timing, and asks you to stay even when everything tells you to run. We started meeting more often, always in secret. Movie nights that turned into slow kisses. Long walks where our hands brushed but never fully held. I memorized the way his cologne lingered on my shirt, the way he said my name like it meant something sacred. But every time I thought we were getting closer, he pulled away. "People like me don't get happy endings," he said once, almost laughing. "Maybe you've just been reading the wrong stories," I replied. Things fell apart the night Caleb found out. He came to my apartment unannounced, holding his phone with a photo of me and Noah, outside a cafe, my hand still on Noah's arm. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like," he demanded. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. His eyes hardened. "He told me you were just friends, that you were helping him move on. You think I'm stupid?" Caleb stormed out before I could explain. Later that night, Noah called. "He knows." "I know," I said quietly. "What now?" There was a long pause. Then, "We stop, before it destroys everything." The line went dead. Days turned into weeks, and I didn't see him again. I kept replaying every word, every touch, wondering if any of it had been real. Caleb barely spoke to me at work anymore. The world felt smaller without Noah in it. Then, one rainy afternoon, I saw him again standing at the edge of the park near my apartment, soaked, holding an umbrella he wasn't even using. When our eyes met, I knew the storm wasn't over. "Why are you here?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, "Because pretending not to care isn't working." And just like that, all the walls he'd built came crashing down. He stepped closer, voice breaking. I'm scared, Eli. Scared of what people will think. Of losing my job, my family. But I'm more scared of losing you. I didn't say anything. I just reached for his hand. For the first time, he didn't pull away. We stood there in the rain, silent except for the sound of water hitting the pavement. His hand was trembling in mine, but for once, he didn't hide it. The city around us blurred into soft streaks of gray and gold, like even the world had stopped to listen. I wanted to say something poetic, something that would make all of this pain worth it, but all I could manage was a whisper. You're late. Noah let out a broken laugh. I always am. Then, before I could stop him, he leaned in and kissed me, not like in the movies, not perfect or choreographed. It was desperate, messy, full of everything we tried so hard to suppress. His lips were cold from the rain, but his heart, I swear, was burning. For the first time, there were no lies left between us. The next few weeks were chaos. Caleb wouldn't talk to either of us. The office turned into a war zone of awkward silences and half-finished conversations. I caught people staring, whispering when they thought I couldn't hear. Noah tried to act like it didn't bother him, but I saw the tension in his shoulders every time he walked into a room. One night, I found him sitting in his car outside my apartment, head resting on the steering wheel. I can't keep doing this, he said without looking up. Every day feels like walking on glass. Then let's stop hiding, I said. He finally looked at me, eyes wide, afraid but curious. You think it's that easy? No, I said, stepping closer. But I think it's worth it. 2 days later, he did something I never expected. He told Caleb the truth. I wasn't there, but I heard about it afterward. He walked into Caleb's office, shut the door, and said everything, how it started, what it meant, and how sorry he was for betraying his trust. Caleb didn't yell. He just sat there quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You're still my brother, but you broke something that'll take time to fix." That night, Noah came over, eyes red but lighter somehow. He didn't forgive me, he said, but he didn't hate me either. Maybe that's a start. We sat on the couch, and for the first time we talked about the future, not as a fantasy, but as something we could build. Slowly, carefully, together. Months passed. The whispers faded. The city moved on, as it always does. But we didn't go back to who we were before. We couldn't. There was something raw and real between us now. Some nights we'd sit on his rooftop, the same one where we'd once stood apart, and talk about everything we used to be afraid of. I used to think love was supposed to be clean, Noah said once, his arm draped over my shoulder. Predictable, like a contract you could sign. And now? I asked. He smiled. Now I think it's supposed to ruin you a little. In a good way. I laughed softly. That sounds about right. He turned to me, eyes glowing in the soft light of the city. You ruined me perfectly. When winter came, we decided to take a trip, nothing fancy. Just a quiet weekend in a cabin near Lake Tahoe. It was cold, the kind that made your breath visible and your heart warmer. The first night there, we sat by the fire, wrapped in one blanket. He was reviewing some case files, and I was pretending to read, though really I was just watching him, the way the light flickered on his face, the tiny crease between his brows when he was focused. Why do you keep looking at me like that? He asked, not looking up. Because you still don't believe you deserve to be loved? I said softly. He put down the papers, staring into the fire. I don't. Yes, you do, I whispered. And I'll keep proving it until you believe me. He didn't answer, but his hand found mine beneath the blanket and held on tight. The next morning, snow fell thick and silent. The world outside our window looked untouched, like a blank page waiting for us to write something new. Noah made coffee. I made pancakes that turned out more like burnt frisbees. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. It was simple, stupidly ordinary, and yet it felt like peace. At one point, he came up behind me, slid his arms around my waist, and rested his chin on my shoulder. Do you ever think about how different life could have been if we'd never met? He asked. Every day, I said. And I thank God it didn't go that way. He kissed the side of my neck. You're too good for me. I turned around and smiled. Maybe, but you're exactly right for me. When we returned to San Francisco, things were still far from perfect. Caleb and I were polite now, not friends again, not yet, but civil. Sometimes I'd catch him watching us, his expression unreadable. Then one afternoon he pulled me aside. "Look," he said, voice awkward but sincere. "I've had time to think. You make him better, happier." I didn't think that was possible. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't screw it up." That night, I told Noah what his brother had said. He smiled faintly, tears in his eyes. "He doesn't say things like that often." "I guess we're both changing," I said. "Yeah," he whispered. "Maybe we finally stopped being afraid." The following spring, Noah took me to a small hill overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge at sunset. It was the same place he'd gone to think, he said back when he thought love wasn't meant for him. "I used to stand here and convince myself I was better off alone," he said, hands in his pockets. "That if I kept everything under control, nothing could hurt me. And now?" I asked. He turned toward me, smiling softly. "Now I know that love isn't about control. It's about surrender." Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small ring, simple, silver, nothing extravagant. My heart stopped. "Eli," he said quietly, "you changed my life. You made me brave enough to want something real. So, will you keep ruining me? Forever?" I laughed, choked, messy laughter through tears. "God, you're terrible at proposals." He grinned. "Is that a yes?" I nodded, pulling him close. "That's a yes." The wind carried the sound of the ocean below us, and the city lights shimmered like 1,000 tiny promises. He kissed me, then slow, tender, full of everything we'd fought for. All the fear, the loss, the defiance, melted into one truth. Love had found us despite everything. And for the first time, I didn't feel like we were hiding. We stood there as the sky burned gold behind the bridge. Two men who had spent too long running from what they were finally standing still, together. Love hadn't fixed us. It had simply made us whole. Some stories don't end in perfection. They end in peace. And peace, I've learned, is the most romantic ending of all. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.